To Florida Matters, live and local, broadcasting from the Doctors Lorraine Rubis and Neil Frankel studio at WUSF in Tampa. I'm Kathy Carter, filling in for Matthew Petty this week. Well, earlier this week, the residents of Arcadia, Florida, were in shock when they noticed ICE agents in their neighborhood. Maggie Velasquez, the manager of La Placita Mexicana, saw a Facebook post notifying the area that immigration agents were on their way. That was early Tuesday morning. The aftermath and reason for ICE's trip to Arcadia are still developing. WUSF reached out to the Department of Homeland Security to confirm ICE activity in Arcadia, but have not received a response yet. WUSF's Nancy Guan has been covering this story as it unfolds, and she joins us now to share an update. Nancy, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Kathy.
Well, Nancy, multiple sightings of federal immigration agents have been reported across Florida in recent days. On Tuesday, a man was killed by a tractor trailer while he was running away from immigration officers. That was in St. Augustine. Yes. And you have been covering an incident that happened Tuesday in Arcadia. First, remind our listeners who may not be aware, where is Arcadia?
Yeah, Arcadia, Florida is a city about 91 miles southwest of Tampa. It's part of DeSoto County. And it's a pretty diverse area, from what I've heard, has a large immigrant community.
And what happened after Maggie Velasquez saw the post about ICE on Facebook heading to Arcadia?
Yeah, so Maggie Velasquez, she's the manager of the restaurant La Placita Mexicana. Like you mentioned, that restaurant is located right off of this busy Highway 17 area. And I reached her by phone. She kind of recounted what had happened that day. She told me that she had first heard from customers that immigration agents were in the area, so she went outside and checked, didn't see anything at first, so she went back into the restaurant, got on social media where she actually posts a lot, and she started seeing these Facebook posts about agents being near her restaurant. So she went out a second time, and that's when she saw these masked agents with vests parked outside with these large vans. And Maggie told me that she heard that these immigration agents or these agents identified themselves as immigration and began asking people for their papers. So that's when she kind of started jumping into action. She ran back inside the restaurant, started waving people inside, she said, and then locked the doors. And she described that at that point, the agents were kind of focused on what was happening in the parking lot, asking people there for their papers. And she said that one of the men there had fled the parking lot, and he was being chased by agents, and they had apprehended him. So,
do we know if any of the residents have been questioned or detained?
Well, we know from, these eyewitnesses that they saw multiple people being arrested. Besides Maggie, I spoke with another Arcadia resident. Her name, we call her JF by her initials because she wanted to remain anonymous. She said that she saw immigration agents near the CVS, which was about a block and a half north of the restaurant, and that they were there with their van apprehending two workers. JF told me that she was on the way to work, saw what happened, made a U-turn, and actually drove closer to see what was going on. And she said that an agent told her to back off and that she could be arrested for obstruction. So JF, she ended up driving a little further away, took a very brief video. She said she thought she had taken a longer video, but, she was nervous in the moment. But in that short video that you can see a group of officers, with their vests, masks on, surrounding a handcuffed man in what appears to be a bright green construction uniform. It looks like they were, getting into that white van. So
right. So there is some video footage of these ICE encounters happening in Arcadia. You also spoke to some of the eyewitnesses. Now, you did say that one wished to remain anonymous, which, that's the fear of backlash. Do many people feel this way when speaking about ICE?
Yeah, I mean, you get a mix of people, some who are okay with using their name, a lot who aren't. In this woman's case, JF, she said that she was afraid of backlash from her workplace, and a lot of people are, protesters especially when you speak to them. I mean, immigration has become a contentious issue, so you're going to get that a lot. People who are afraid to put their name out there. There's also people who have family members who are immigrants who might not have stable status, and so they don't want to draw attention to themselves or their family. I will say, though, there's been an uptick of people wanting to remain anonymous, especially if they're immigrants themselves. People who are asylum seekers who were protected under TPS, these protections, as they're being stripped away, there's less and less people willing to identify themselves. So.
Well, we are talking immigration enforcement here in Florida and immigration enforcement that happened just a few days ago in Arcadia, Florida. If you have any thoughts about this or want to ask Nancy Guan, who covers immigration for WUSF, you can join the conversation right now. Call 813-755-6562. Again, that's 813-755-6562. You can email us as well, and that's at FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Nancy, what is Florida State Police's relationship with ICE officers?
Yeah, that's a great question. Florida local law enforcement have a very close relationship with federal immigration agents, I would say closer than most other states, and that's mainly due to their 287G agreements. We have the highest number of 287G agreements in the country, and that agreement is basically a contract between local law enforcement and ICE that allows local officers, deputies, or state troopers to carry out basic immigration enforcement tasks. So that can be asking about immigration status or, serving ICE warrants. What might happen and what happens often is that a local officer arrests someone for a traffic infraction, for example. I've spoken with people who were arrested for making an illegal U-turn, running a red light, not having a cover over their license plate, things like that. And once that officer arrests that individual, they can run their name through the ICE database, or, they ask for their license, realize that they don't have a license since if you're undocumented, you can't get a license in Florida, and they transfer them to ICE. So a large number of people who end up in ICE custody in Florida, a lot of the time they were apprehended by a local officer first because of this. So.
Yeah, so you mentioned that Florida has the highest number of local law enforcement agencies working with ICE. Do we know in Arcadia specifically, were the city or even DeSoto County Police involved in the encounter?
So not in what happened on Tuesday. Okay. I reached out to the Arcadia Police and the DeSoto County Sheriffs, and they had said they had no involvement in what happened. They do have 287G agreements, but it doesn't seem like that they were involved in the ICE activity on Tuesday.
So what do we know now that it's 2 days later? Is there any reports of ICE still being in the area?
It's hard to say. I did reach out to some of the people I spoke with to ask if they've seen anything else. Haven't heard back yet. A lot of people tend to post ICE activity online. And that's how most people are aware of, ICE being in their neighborhoods. But a lot of the time, it's not verifiable for us as journalists. So it is really hard to say. And with DHS, not responding and confirming that there's ICE activity, it is pretty hard to say whether they're still there or if they've moved on to other cities and, started, doing immigration enforcement elsewhere.
So have you heard from any of the other local businesses or the public spaces, concerns about having less customers due to the activity that, maybe people are staying at home because they fear going out in public right now?
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that a lot of people are scared of going outside. When I spoke with the co-owner of La Placita Mexicana on Tuesday, he said that a couple of the shops around them have closed, is what he's witnessed. He himself said that they were trying to keep La Placita open, if anyone still needed food. I also saw that Maggie Velasquez, she had posted on her Facebook that if anyone else needed food, that they could possibly bring it to them. So people are kind of hunkering down, and that typically happens when there's a huge ICE presence in a particular area. We've seen that in places like Chicago, LA. Local businesses will shut down. The local economy is definitely affected. So.
Well, despite Arcadia being one of the many places in the U.S. visited by ICE, including incidents in other parts of the state, this particular interaction has been kind of quiet in the news cycle. Why would that be?
Yeah, it's hard to say, right? It's been several, incidents with ICE happening in the last several days. I think maybe those have taken a bit more attention. There was a shooting in Houston. There was a shooting in Maine. ICE officers had shot a man. So, that has taken up a lot of the news headlines. There was also a man in St. Augustine, like you said, who was fleeing immigration enforcement, and he had been ran over by a tractor trailer. It is hard to say why ICE is out there, but they're also out there in a lot of other places doing a lot of things. So.
And are you hearing from local advocates urging some of these local agencies to end their partnerships with ICE?
Oh, yeah, certainly. Immigrant advocacy groups, they see 287G as the main driver of immigration enforcement in Florida. And there's groups who are, going to local meetings, city council, county commissions, telling them to end these agreements. I mean, Florida state law says that sheriff's departments have to comply with the 287G. Police don't. So some people are trying to push for the police to, back off of these agreements or, at least not comply with them. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Nancy Guan is a reporter for WUSF. She has been covering ICE activity in Arcadia. Nancy, thanks for catching us up today on that story.
Thank you.
Up next, we're talking with a correspondent from NPR's Education Desk about the state's expanding swim voucher program. You're listening to Florida Matters, live and local, and we'll have more to come after this.
Hurricane season is here. It's time to replenish your kit for any event. Get a storm supply checklist, safety plan, and comprehensive guide at WUSF.org. And stay tuned on air and online for dependable weather information. WUSF, ready to serve.
Listener support powers WUSF. Funding also comes from David Reynolds Jewelry & Coin, Tampa Bay's full-service jewelry store since 1971. Custom design, appraisals, jewelry, and watch repair. David Reynolds Jewelry & Coin. All that glitters, bought and sold. At 4009 Central Avenue, St. Pete.
WUSF is strengthened by listeners who create a lasting impact, like B and Jack Donis, whose legacy gift supports public radio this community can count on. You can help WUSF thrive. Visit WUSF.org/legacy or call Scott Nolan at 813-974-8682 to learn more.
Welcome back to Florida Matters, live and local. I'm Kathy Carter. Well, Florida's expanded swim voucher program went into effect earlier this month. The law puts children ages 1 to 7 who have autism at the front of the line for subsidized swim lessons. And in Florida, childhood drowning rates are among the highest in the nation. For kids on the spectrum, that danger is much higher. Studies show that kids with autism are 160 times more likely to die from drowning than other children, in part because of a sensory attraction to water paired with a tendency to wander. Joining us now is Janika Mehta. She's a correspondent with NPR's Education Desk, where she reports on disabilities and learning differences. She reported earlier this month on this story. Janaki, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Kathy.
Well, we want to hear from you as well. Would a swim voucher help your family? Have you already qualified for one? Do your local swim schools have the capacity to meet the demand for specialized lessons? You can join the conversation by calling 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. Or you can email us. That's FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Janaki, for our listeners who are just hearing about this update to the law, I should say, what does this voucher program provide and how can families actually secure one?
So the voucher program was first established in 2024, and in past years it was for kids ages 4 and under, and it generally came out to about $200 per child to use for about 8 lessons at a qualifying swim school. The program is also aimed at low-income families, and now the state has expanded the program to serve kids ages 1 to 7. As you said, kids with autism are at the front of the line because of the very elevated risk of drowning. In terms of actually getting a voucher with the new program, families can keep an eye on the Florida Department of Health's water safety website for applications in the coming months. They also have an approved list of providers there and what families need to qualify. I did ask the state health department about timelines, and they did not answer my questions about exactly when the applications will open and how many vouchers they expect to give in this coming year. But I did hear from Democrat House Representative Anna Eskamani, who's one of the co-sponsors of the bill. And she said the legislature has indeed increased funding for the program for the 26-27 year. And but that the administrative side of this, so again, the applications, all of that, that's going to be on the Department of Health. In the meantime, Kathy, I'll also just mention many counties in Florida have their own local swim subsidy programs, and there are several low cost or even like free swim lessons in the Tampa area for kids with disabilities. So it's worth families poking around to look for those resources while the state program takes shape.
Well, thanks for that. For this story, you spent some time with YMCA of South Florida watching their Swim Buddies program, and they offered more than your standard swim lessons. Tell us about the program.
Yeah, so the YMCA of South Florida is an approved vendor through the state. And I knew, though, they kind of already had a pretty robust program for kids of all kinds of disabilities. The program is called Swim Buddies. And most of the students they serve there do have autism. So I wanted to see how they do things. I went on down and I'll share some of the techniques that make Swim Buddies make their program kind of unique and effective for kids with autism. So when each child begins a program, they're evaluated. There's a formal evaluation to see what their strengths are, what their needs are, and then rather than group instruction, the recreational therapists and trained volunteers work one-on-one with students and do these sort of tailored lessons. And that one-on-one piece is really important because kids with autism are prone to running away or wandering. So, instructors are never more than an arm's length away. They're trained to do things like redirect children when they, if that does happen. I saw this happening while I was there, as one child sort of darted out of the pool, and the instructor very firmly, sort of calmly redirected the child back in, used a toy to lure him back in. So lots of, unique training that these volunteers and therapists get.
Well, Janaki, in your story, you spoke with Augusto Sandino, whose 7-year-old son David has been in the Swim Buddies program. Let's listen to what he told you about the financial reality of raising a child on the spectrum.
People who don't have kids on the spectrum don't take in mind that we're paying a lot for a lot of stuff like behavioral therapy, speech, OT, the advocates that we take to the schools, all the programs. Everything's money, man. So every little bit helps, and also creating these inclusive communities is a big win.
Well, like Augusto told you, everything's money. A $200 voucher may seem modest to some, but what does your reporting actually reveal about the financial challenges eased by swim voucher programs?
Yeah, so I spoke to some parents poolside to, ask them, including Augusto, if this kind of program, if they would be interested in it. And like Swim Buddies is already quite affordable. So a lot of these families were like, we're not going to wait to see if we qualify. One of the parents I talked to actually said that she did apply and didn't get the voucher. But this was a life-saving enough, important skill that she needed her son to have. So she enrolled him. And so, I think a lot of parents there were really enthusiastic. They're glad this program is happening, but they were also realistic because in the program's first year, less than a third of families who applied actually got the voucher. So the reality is there haven't really been enough, at least in past years, enough vouchers to meet demand. But the Florida legislature did increase funding from for the program. Last year it was about $1 million that the state had set aside. This year it'll be $1.7 million. So hopefully that helps to meet more of that demand.
So passing the law is one thing, implementation is another. What are advocates telling you are some of the biggest hurdles to making sure these vouchers reach those who need them the most?
Yeah, so, we've already talked about the need for more money. I
Hmm.
heard that from parents, from advocates, but advocates also told me swim programs that are tailored to kids with autism and other disabilities, they don't exist as widely. Swim Buddies is a really special program that's been around for a long time. It's one of the biggest of its kind in the area, but even for some of the approved vendors, they might not be trained in the way that some of the recreational therapists I saw were. And so, Garland Jones, who leads the program at Swim Buddies, told me there's a huge need across the state for trained recreational therapists. And yeah, so I think that's sort of one of the big hurdles. I will say, in my conversation with Representative Anna Skamani, she said one of the things this program is doing is getting the word out about drowning prevention. Health centers where parents, when they welcome their newborn into their life, will be given resources, information about drowning prevention and the swim voucher program. So we should be seeing that soon too.
So we just have about 30 seconds left, but I did want to make people aware that part of what makes drowning risk for kids with autism so much higher is that they are often attracted to water. Isn't that right?
That's exactly right. Obviously, this is not true for every child, but
Sure.
lots of kids with autism love, there's a lot of sensory stuff that's really attractive about water. It's the sparkle of the water. It can be the pressure that they feel when they're in it. And so that's a beautiful thing. And that's what's so cool about this program is I think a lot of these, the Swim Buddies program I was talking about is a lot of these trainers know how to kind of lean into that love for water, but also recognize that there's a real threat, obviously. And that's why they are focusing so heavily on these life-saving skills.
Well, thank you so much, Janaki Mehta. She's a reporter with NPR's Education Desk. Janaki, thank you so much for joining us. Up next, we're taking a look at a rise in conservation cemeteries in Florida. You're listening to Florida Matters Live and Local. We will have more to come right after this.
How do you translate a nearly 3,000-year-old epic poem to the big screen?
Sometimes what feels like adding things, in a way, you're sometimes just looking at the source material with a specific lens, a modern lens.
I'm Scott Detrow. My conversation with Christopher Nolan, writer and director of the new film The Odyssey, on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
This afternoon at 4 on WUSF.
You tune in to WUSF for all your favorite NPR shows. And for a list of when you can hear them, visit WUSF.org. WUSF is your spot for local, on air and online.
Badawi Law, offering legal services in personal injury, immigration, and auto accidents, with offices in Tampa, Florida. Office information and practice details at badawilaw.com or learn more on Instagram at Badawi Law.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Kathy Carter. Well, when planning a funeral, most families don't even think twice about who to call. It's likely the same funeral home the family has used before or one that's been in their town for generations. Most people also tend to choose the same methods for body disposal, a burial in a casket or cremation. According to the National Funeral Directors Association, the cremation rate for 2025 was 63%. While the burial rate was at 32%. But there has been a resurgence in interest for burials among Gen Z. Over half the people surveyed by the Wake Forest Law School were interested in casket burials. But you have more options than you may be aware of. Many people are starting to get interested in green burials and the various cemeteries that offer them. They offer a more cost-efficient burial method that doesn't involve harsh chemicals or materials that harm the earth or pollute the groundwater. And joining us to talk more about the rise in green burials in Florida is Laura Starkey, Executive Director of the Heartwood Preserve Conservation Cemetery in Newport Richey. Laura, thanks for being with us this afternoon.
Thanks. It's so nice to be here.
Also, Heather Grove, Executive Director of the Prairie Creek Conservation Cemetery in Alachua County. Heather, thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you.
And Fawn Hendricks. She's the land manager of Glendale Memorial Nature Preserve in the Panhandle. Hi, Fawn.
Thank you so much for having us.
Well, if you have a question about green burials in Florida, give us a call. It's 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. You can also email us at FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Laura, we'll start with you. For listeners new to the concept of a green burial, how is it different from traditional burial methods, and what are conservation cemeteries?
Yeah, so what we commonly know as green burial, I like to call it natural burial, but green burial refers to the fact that there is no embalming of the body. The body is placed in a biodegradable container, either wrapped in a shroud, cotton, linen, something natural fiber shroud, or a pine box casket, or some other wicker, or some other type of biodegradable natural material casket. Additionally, there's no vault in the ground, so basically everything that goes in the ground is biodegradable. And then it's just basically simplifying the process. It's really kind of going back to how burials used to always be and how it still is in much of the world. So it's just very simple and returning to the earth.
Heather, traditional funerals average around $8,000, while some green or natural burials, as Laura said, range from $2,000 to $4,000 because they do skip the vaults and those chemicals. How much of the demand at Prairie Creek is driven by clients aiming to save money versus environmental values?
Yeah, there's so many reasons people choose conservation burial or green burial. I'd say I feel it's about half, but there's so many other reasons. I think there's a big resurgence in people wanting something that they can participate in and feel like they're a part of the community, not just people, but the natural community. So we see a lot of people choosing natural burial for the environment, to come to a place that they can enjoy, whether it's hiking, doing plantings, or even volunteering at our cemetery. And also, there's the environmental impact as well that so many people are trying to have now that they're learning about the negative impacts of more conventional burial. So there's many reasons, but I'd say it's probably a good mix of those, choosing because can be often a more affordable option for body burial.
And Vaughn will bring you into the conversation. Glendale Memorial Nature Preserve in the Panhandle is a pioneer, one of the very first green burial sites in the entire country. How's the public reaction shifted from when you first opened your gates to the rise in interest we are seeing more of today?
It has been phenomenal. So we opened in 2002. We were the second conservational burial ground to open in the U.S. And according to usfunerals.com, there's 220 green burials in the U.S. now, with just under 20 of them being conservation. So the fact that this has blown up across the whole country is amazing. Families are having access to these burial grounds a lot closer to home without having to travel to have the natural burial that they're seeking. So that's been amazing that it's catching on and that more green burial sites are opening.
So it sounds like there are interest across generations, but have you found some certain target audience that are mainly seeking these green burials? And is there kind of a generational difference as generations do grow older?
I don't think so for us personally. We kind of still see a mix of ages and generations that come out here. Now, of course, we have people who are a lot older who, end of life preparations are in their mind than, say, the younger generation. But then we are getting the younger generation who death care is becoming more socially acceptable. And they're like, hey, maybe I should check it out. And they'll come out here and just take a tour. But we have a motto out here that says we want your body. We don't mean to rush you. So any age, really, you need to prepare for your end of life preparations. It doesn't matter how old you are.
And Heather, Prairie Creek actively partners with Alachua Conservation Trust. How does a conservation cemetery legally shield Florida's wild spaces from commercial overdevelopment?
Yeah, so we actually have a conservation easement with the county that's held with Alachua Conservation Trust, who is the landowner of our cemetery. So, by putting these lands into protection in perpetuity, each person that's buried there is leaving this legacy of land preservation. Each plot is 150 square feet. So as we conserve land in that way, we're also actively restoring it as well back to the native ecosystems that they should be. So, ACT is amazing. We partner with them in terms of that active restoration, and making sure that we can actually connect through to even bigger conservation goals like our Florida Wildlife Corridor and have a bigger impact in that way as well. So, yeah.
Well, do you have a question about how green burials work, the logistics, or how it all impacts our local environment? If you do, give us a call, 813-755-6562. You can also email us at FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Well, Laura, your property protects an intact longleaf pine flatwoods ecosystem. How does managing a cemetery that is also a protected nature preserve change how you maintain the grounds compared to a traditional corporate graveyard?
Yeah, because we're maintaining this beautiful ecosystem. This is an ecosystem that requires fire, the existence of fire on the landscape. It has had fire for tens of thousands of years. So there's a long history ecologically of fire on this landscape. So it's really critical that we continue to do what we call prescribed burns or prescribed fire, which occurs. We have a burn every year, at least one burn every summer, but each area rotates, and so each burn area needs to burn on a general average of every 3 years. We're on a 3-year rotation. So our prescribed fires are a really important part of what we do for land management. We also manage for invasive species of mostly plants that come in that can take over a natural ecosystem. So those are the two main pieces of our land management. Because it's fire, that can be really upsetting for people that don't understand it or don't know about it. So we have a lot of ways that we are informing our clientele, our families, and the general public, as well as informing and educating, and also engaging them, because it's such an amazing experience to see an area that needs fire, that has had prescribed fire go on across the land, and then to see it recover immediately. And when I say recover, meaning rebound, respond with new fresh growth. So it's really a great opportunity to engage people on understanding this element of what that requirement needs. Of course, a conventional cemetery isn't going to be doing that because it has one single purpose, which is cemetery. For these cemeteries, we have dual purposes. We have the purpose of laying the loved ones to rest, but it also is the purpose of conserving this ecosystem. In the case of Prairie Creek, it's restoration. In the case of Heartwood Preserve, it's maintaining this ecosystem and helping it to stay protected.
And Heather, one logistical question listeners often wonder about is Florida's heat and the climate. So without chemical embalming or sealed vault, how does your cemetery handle the natural process safely and respectfully in our environment?
Yeah, so if we're talking about decomposition, is that what the question is
Sure.
about? Yeah, so luckily we're just all cemeteries, so we actually legally don't handle the body, the transportation, anything like that. But in place of embalming, the bodies are refrigerated at funeral homes, or during home funerals, they're kept cool for up to 72 hours. So there's really no concern in that respect. Refrigeration is the perfect type of preservation in place of embalming. So yeah, there's no concern there. In terms of working at the cemetery, I think our staff do have concerns about working in the heat. We don't use equipment, so compared to conventional cemeteries that have mowers and excavators and things like that, our staff and volunteers are out there hand digging, doing land work manually. So that's really the only concern we have about the heat.
And Fawn, as a land manager of a 350-acre preserve, how does burying a body wrapped simply in biodegradable materials physically protect Florida's soil and the groundwater?
So because we don't use anything like embalming fluids or any preservatives, what we do is we bury about 3.5 feet deep, and that's typically standard for most green burials is about 3.5, because you're in the aerobic soil. So you get oxygen, you get microbes, you get fungus, there's plant roots and everything like that. So as the body decomposes, human bodies are made up of natural organic material ourselves. So all of that nutrients goes into all of those plant roots and the tree roots. So because we're in the aerobic soil, you can break down a lot faster, and your body provides a lot more nutrient-rich chemicals to the environment around you. So you are basically the best kind of fertilizer there is around that can supply those plants and the flowers and the trees. So on a conservational standpoint, that's really good for all of our plants that we have here.
Laura, let's speak a little bit about the intersection of nature and grief. What is the emotional feedback you've heard from families who choose to return their loved ones directly to the earth?
What I have noticed since we started 10 years ago is that, when I started, I thought, well, we're going to be certainly an easy connection for those who are outdoors people, who are, nature-based folks and who are hikers and, environmentalists and birders, things like that. And we do connect with that group. But we have people that come out who just coming out from the city, coming from Tampa, coming from St. Pete, driving through a lot of traffic. And they maybe are new to Florida, or they just are not outdoorsy people. Then they drive into our property, drive down our driveway, and they just begin to relax. And I hear this all the time, how much calmer they feel when they arrive. And at the day of the burial, it's a time of grief. It's it's not an easy time. It's never an easy time to lay a loved one to rest. But when we have these burials, which, are done lovingly with dignity and respect and care, laying the body to rest with ropes lowering by hand into the grave, allowing the family to be a part of that process and feeling the nature all around us, it becomes very just a sense of peace and comfort that I believe cannot be found in other places as easily.
And Heather, if a listener wants a green burial, could you give any advice? What's the best way to approach a traditional funeral director who may not be accustomed to this kind of request?
Yeah. So for funeral directors, we're actually hearing more and more from them wanting information on green burials. So I'm sure Hartwood and Glendale as well are sending out packets to funeral directors all the time. But we'll work with the funeral director to inform them on how to properly prepare a body. Many might not be used to shrouding. And then if it's a consumer looking out, definitely go to the Florida Funeral Home Consumer Alliance page. There's a lot of helpful information there to learn more about their rights, because it can be confusing for consumers not knowing exactly what they can and can't ask for. Some funeral homes have their own cemeteries with their own policies. And so it's important to maybe work backwards. You're always welcome to contact one of our cemeteries, and we can help you learn about funeral homes that are.
We're going to have to leave it there, Heather. That was Heather Grove of Prairie Creek Conservation Cemetery. You can just get in touch with her, or Laura Starkey of Heartwood Preserve Conservation Cemetery, or Fawn Hendricks of Glendale Memorial Nature Preserve. Well, have you ever wanted to brew your own beer? Well, stick around, because you're going to hear about a new course at the University of South Florida. You're listening to Florida Matters Live and Local. Stay with us.
I'm Scott Tong. Detroit is recovering from a long collapse. Businesses leaving, people leaving, debt, bankruptcy. Many neighborhoods now are better off than a decade ago.
This park, with all of these features that require investment and maintenance, would not have been here.
Detroit's ongoing uneven recovery, next time Here and Now.
Join us this afternoon from 1 to 3 on WUSF 89.7.
WUSF has you covered for the November midterms. Tell us what issues are important to you this election season. And if you want, a reporter, like me, will reach out to you. Head to WUSF.org and click on the Your Voices link.
There's always something happening close to where you live. Find concerts, exhibitions, markets, and community events anytime at your guide to our community's creative space on artsaccessflorida.org. And thank you to our sponsor, Community Foundation Tampa Bay.
WUSF News is common ground. It's what's happening in your neighborhood and your sports club. It's a kind of infrastructure, and you notice it most when it's gone. WUSF is your spot for local.
Welcome back to Florida Matters Live and Local. I'm Kathy Carter. Well, summer in Florida means trying to find ways to stay cool. For many people, that might look like grabbing cold drinks with friends. Well, some folks from the University of South Florida have teamed up with a local brewery to create the university's first officially branded beer. The school is also offering a 6-month brewery course for those wanting their own branded beer. And joining us now is Joe Askren, a professor in the Muma College of Business and a program director for USF's Brewing Arts Certificate Program. Joe, welcome to Florida Matters.
Kathy, hi, how are you doing? Thanks for having me today. Appreciate it.
You bet. Well, whether you're a craft beer fan or have questions about brewing, let us know. Call 813-755-6562. That's 813-755-6562. Or you can email us at FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. So, Joe, let's start with the obvious question. How does a university get into the beer making business?
That's a great question. It came about around 2015. The industry actually came to us, to USF. I was already teaching a 3-credit fun elective called Intro to Beer Science 3 years before that. But around 2015, three daughters and Green Bench came to us in St. Pete, to the St. Pete campus, and they said, hey, business is booming. Again, this was 2015. We really would love to get some sort of pipeline to students who are prepared to sort of take on the industry. We need help. We need people. And so they, along with at the time Frank Biafor, the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences, they put together a program, and it's great. It's taught by industry experts, so it's wonderful.
And why was it important to partner with a local brewery?
Why is it important for the university to partner with the brewery?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, like I said, the breweries came to the University of South Florida, and it was just a great marriage because University of South Florida, like many other universities, they have a certificate program. Ours is inside the corporate training realm of USF, so it's not for credits or for an actual degree, but it's for a certificate, and so it's usually connected to other industry around the community, around the country. So it was a great fit, and we already had that built into USF, and we just had to create an actual brewing program. And so it uses all of the benefits of USF, the learning platform, the marketing, all those sort of things. So again, it started out with about two breweries that came to us asking to create a program, and now, man, we have over 45 partners in and around the greater Tampa Bay area that help us, run this program. It's great.
So tell us a little bit more about the program itself. How has it evolved over the time that you started it?
If you don't mind, I'd love to just briefly describe what it is.
That would be great.
If that's okay. Yeah. So it's like I said, it's a certificate program, and it's about a 6-month module program. There's 11 modules in 6 weeks that the students work through, and it's all taught by industry professionals. And by that, I mean brewery owners, head brewers, microbiologists, anthropologists, chemists, things like that. And so it lasts 6 months. The students do 100% of the coursework online. And so they're able to connect with these professionals through the 11 modules. And then we have activities through the 6 months that connect students with hands-on learning experiences, whether we're actually executing a recipe that they create. For instance, in Module 7, they get to create a recipe with who better than Adam Stack, who's the plant manager at Yinling Brewery right there in Tampa. He teaches Module 7. They create this wonderful recipe, and then we connect with the brewery and we make it, execute it on their pilot system. And then at the end of the 6 months, they're required to do a hands-on internship, we call it. So they connect with any one of the 44 plus breweries connected to our internship program in the greater Tampa Bay area, and they have to do a 60 to 80-hour internship with that brewery. And some of them started at the very end, but some of them also started during their actual coursework. And then we have students all around the country, Kathy. We have students in different states that are still able to take all of the online coursework, and then we help them connect with the brewery in their area, and they can handle the internship on their end there. We also had a student who's in the service, who was in the Army overseas in Germany, and he was able to do the coursework online and then came back to, he could have stayed there and done it in Europe, but he actually came back to Florida where he lives and did the internship there.
Well, we are speaking with Joe Askren. He's the program director of USF's Brewing Arts Certificate Program. He's also a professor in the Business College. And we want to hear from you. Have you ever tried homebrewing your own beer? If you're just really interested in learning more about this certificate program, Joe is here to answer your questions. Or if you just want to say hi to your favorite local brewery, you can call us at 813-755-6562. You can email us at FloridaMatters@WUSF.org. Well, Joe, the craft beer scene in Tampa Bay is quite robust. What would you think, from your perspective, is about this region that makes local breweries successful here?
Well, I think it starts with a couple different variables. First, just the tourism industry is wonderful. You know, the weather is fantastic. So people just love traveling down to Florida. And if they already live in Florida, you know, they have access to a lot of different breweries. And I would say around 2012 is when it really took off. You know, we already had, you know, the big box breweries, like Anheuser-Busch and et cetera. But a lot of these craft breweries really took off around 2010, 2012 in the greater Tampa Bay area in Florida. And, you know, now there's hundreds of breweries all over. I think there's over 700 breweries in Florida. And there's just a lot of choices. So you just sort of run across any little town in Florida, especially some of the bigger towns like Bradenton, Sarasota, Tampa, St. Pete, and there's multiple brewery choices. And one of the benefits of these breweries is there's variety from brewery to brewery. So every brewery seems to have their sort of theme or core focus of brewing style. So you can go to several different breweries and have several different experiences. And but from a business point of view, from my eyes, just seeing and talking with breweries, one of the more impressive facets of the brewing industry is how they're able to sort of collaborate and work with each other and help each other out from big to small. You know, so you have like a small nano brewery talking to maybe a regional brewery, maybe borrowing their lab facilities to test something to improve their beer. And so breweries really love connecting, collaborating both up and downstream. There's lots of conventions. There's lots of brewing festivals in and around Florida, definitely all over the country. And so breweries get to connect with each other weekly, monthly throughout the year. And so they really help. There's a really interesting sort of partnership happening and has been happening since the brewery industry took off in Florida.
Well, as we mentioned, you are a business professor. So you're teaching students the arts of brewing, but what trends are you watching for, for as a business aspect? Are people tending more to go for lighter beers now, or non-alcoholic options are very popular? So what do you teach your students about locally sourced ingredients and the business end of it?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kathy. That's a great question. Definitely lagers are sort of really taken off now. They happen over the past couple of years. You're seeing a lot of lighter styles going on taps in different breweries. And so, you know, maybe a brewery might have had as one of their core beers, it might have had just IPAs, and that's all they did for years. Well, that's sort of changed a little bit. So, you know, customers are demanding sort of lighter, easier drinking beers. And by that, I mean maybe lower alcohol content, things like that. A major change in trend in breweries this is craft breweries that have tasting rooms over the past few years has been having having activities and events throughout the week that people go to, so from my hospitality point of view, this is key. So breweries are creating these incredible destinations where customers can come in and have memorable experiences where they're not just drinking beer. There might be some sort of festival or maybe lobster fests going on, or some sort of holiday some sort of sporting event, or maybe other activities like game show night, you name it. There's all kinds of other activities. So breweries have picked up on that a few years ago. So they're creating some incredible experiences for guests, not just the beer. Of course, the beer is the heart of everything, but they learned to really create an incredible product with peripheral products, right? Not just the beer.
Yeah, and don't forget the music bingo nights. Those are big too.
Yeah.
Now, do you brew at home?
I used to, but it's funny. I have a chef background. I came up as a chef, worked in different hotels and resorts over a couple decades, and then taught at Le Cordon Bleu at Culinary Arts, and worked at some great hotels, and I did some sort of hacking around with home brewing, and then when I wrote the first course at USF in beer, it's called Intro to Beer Science. I connected with a chemist, and he and I put it together and started teaching that in 2013, and so then I had to really take it serious, and I really dove in deeper and connected with breweries and learned how to take home brewing to the next level and sort of mirror what breweries are doing on a bigger scale. But we were able to do some incredible things on our pilot system that we have at USF, which is it's a I guess glorified home brewing system that we have at USF. It really gives the students a chance to sort of experience what it might be like if they scaled it up to the craft brewing size.
And USF has its first officially branded beer.
That's right. That's right. Yes. And that great idea came to us from Matt Dom, who's the owner of Master's Brewery in St. Pete. So check that out. If you ever get over to St. Pete, check out Master's Brewery. He had the idea of taking a beer style that one of our students created and turning it into a beer that locals might like. And ironically enough, we just talked about that. We created a lager beer that Matt now produces at his brewery at Masteries in St. Pete. And yeah, we have USF legal approval. It's packaged and has the USF logo on it. And so that is making its way. It's just pretty new. It's pretty early. But it's making its way into different stores in and around St. Pete and Tampa. And the proceeds go to help support our Brewing Arts program, certificate program.
Well, we're almost out of time, but if somebody is interested in learning more, what's the best way that they should reach out to you or the school about the 6-month course that you're offering?
Yeah, they can go right to USF Brewing Arts. If they just Google USF Brewing Arts, it'll bring them right to that first link that pops up, takes them right to the homepage, and they can get going. And I got to really plug something incredible that just happened recently. We
actually have about only 20 seconds left, so we're going to add that to our web story about this.
Perfect.
So we'll make sure we get that out there.
Perfect.
That is our show for today. Florida Matters live and local. Executive producer is Grayson Doctor. Our producers are Amelie Horse and Quincy Walters. Our engineers are Jackson Harp and Gio Govan. Jackson composes this music. Malika Hollis handled the video. You can subscribe to Florida Matters wherever you get your podcasts. You can also watch on WUSF's YouTube channel. I'm Kathy Carter. Thanks for listening and watching.